that is hard to not be able to get back home.
I'll be going back very soon. Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay, well, welcome everybody. Welcome, welcome. This is Dr. Tererai Trent. We are like beyond honored and thrilled to have her here. We're so excited. I just want to give you guys a quick introduction to her and what we're going to be doing with this discussion, and then we'll really just dive in with Dr. Trent. So first, I know Dr. Trent because of Azure. Azure adores Tererai, and she has talked to me about you for as long as I've known Azure and saying she wants to get you to do some things with the teller community. She wants to introduce this community to you. And so when you did your live with Azure, that was when I had heard your full story for the first time, or I guess a piece of your story for the first time. And I was blown away. And so we were so honored that you were willing to do this book club with us, because I think these women really need what is in this book, The Awakened Women, which it won what was the award it won, Dr. Trent? It was named the Outstanding Literary Work at the 49th NAACP Image Awards. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes, that's right. Yeah.
It's incredible. And she's been dubbed Oprah's favorite guest of all time. She's incredible. She's spoken all around the world. And so we're just excited to have her here so that our purpose for today's discussion is that we are going to get to know the purpose of this book. Oh, I'm letting people in as I'm speaking, sorry. Okay, so we have Tererai for an hour, and we want to focus this discussion on getting to know her story and giving you all a chance to ask her your questions. I will do a formal Q&A at the end, the last 15 minutes, but if you have questions as Tererai is speaking, as we're discussing, feel free to either leave it in the chat, or even easier for me to notice is if you click on your reactions on the bar down below, there's a raise hand icon, and you can raise it. And when I will try to monitor that so that we can give you a chance to ask your questions to Tererai. But we're going to focus the discussion on her story, how this book came to be, and how we can start on our journey to becoming an awakened woman. And then at the very end, I know Tererai is busy, and so you are more than welcome to hop off and do whatever you need to do, but I will leave space for another half hour to do a writing prompt from here and for us to share and discuss if we would like to. So we're going to dive in. Dr. Trent, can you first tell us a little bit about your personal story and how this book, The Awakened Woman, came to be?
Wow, gosh, I don't know how I can fit in my personal story within this time, but I'll try my best. But anyway, let me say hi to you all. I am just so thrilled to see you. It's just amazing. And if you don't mind, we 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Yes. 1,
okay.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, a couple are popping in still.
Okay, and we are all here from the US, or one of you is, where are you from, guys?
Around the world.
Canada.
Canada.
We have Germany on here.
Germany. Okay. All right. So I'm assuming you have read my book, right? The Awakened Woman.
They're starting it. We're starting it this month. Okay. So we're gonna have you on the end of the month too, after they fully read it.
All right. Oh, I can see. So, gosh, my goodness, I was born a silenced woman. Let me just start by saying that. And I always talk about, I come from this long line of women who had been silenced, but they wanted to achieve their dreams, but they could not because, one, we were born in a country that was colonized by the British. So a lot of trauma, a lot of oppression going on, and then the denial of education. And there's something that I talk about in this book, the collusion of a colonial system and patriarchy. Those things, when they come together, somehow women and girls, they find themselves sitting in a bombshell. So a lot of women were not educated because men, they had to go and work somewhere else. And culturally, women were just denied this right. So in this book, I realized that coming from a poor rural village in Zimbabwe, I wanted to make sure that women and girls were not going to be silenced as I was. Because by the time I was 18, I was a mother to 4 children without a high school education. But all I wanted was an education more than anything else. I grew up poor in terms of financial poverty, but I was very rich in terms of the values that were passed down to me from my grandmother, which she had also received from her great-grandmother. I remember when I was young, I would sit around an open fire and listen to these stories of women who, despite their silencing, but they were great storytellers. And my grandmother was a midwife. So she would go and deliver babies, and I would sometimes accompany her. Without the ability to read and write, she had this wisdom. So I grew up with what I call wisdom whisperers, the librarians of our memories. That's my story. And I wrote this book. Can we be the librarians of the memories of our ancestors, of the memories of our grandmothers? Can we be the fertile grounds for other women to rise and awaken from their silencing? That's the reason why I wrote this book, from my own experience. So you'll find partly it's memoir, partly it's poetic, partly it's a guide to life. That's what you'll find in this book. You will love this book. Um, I remember when I was, I think around 20 years of age, uneducated, poor, and thinking, oh my goodness, I need this education so badly. Because when we gained our independence, remember I was born during the colonial system and we gained our independence, and all of a sudden, these women were coming from all over the world, were coming to my community. They were coming to Zimbabwe, Canadians, Australians, Americans. And there was something about these women, a kind of a freedom, an awakening that I wanted as a silenced woman. And so I met this woman who truly made me believe in my dreams by asking me one question: what are your dreams? And no one in my life had asked me that question. And I am looking at this woman and I am thinking, me, poor Tererai, Black woman, marginalized, oppressed, how can I even be think of responding to a question, what are your dreams? The other women in that circle, when this woman came, start talking about the need to educate their children, food security, clothing, and I could not open my mouth because my dream was so deep. And this woman looked at me. Later on, I learned her name was Jolak. and she was an American woman. She asked, "You have been quiet." When I opened my mouth, I became a chatterbox. And I said, "I want to go to America. I want to have an undergraduate degree, a master's, and a PhD." There was silence in the group because women were silenced. Women, we are not supposed to talk about those kinds of dreams. We are only supposed to talk about the dreams for our children, the dreams for our men. What about my own dreams? What about me? So I always knew I needed to talk about my own dreams. I needed to own my voice. And she said, if you believe in those dreams and you work hard, they are achievable. That was the beginning of my own awakening. I ran to my mother and I told my mother, I met a woman who has inspired me. My mother said, write down those dreams and bury them. The word bury and plant are the same. We bury the seed in the ground, we plant the seed in the ground to protect the seed from the weather, from insects. So I come from this culture where when a child is born, and you read also from this book, when a child is born, the female elders of the village, the ones that I call the fertile ground, the librarians of our memories, they would always surround this infant and snip off the umbilical cord or the birth cord of that baby. And they tie the umbilical cord in an old dress that the mother once worn. That's the ritual. And then they plant that umbilical cord deep down under the ground with the belief that when this child grows, wherever they go, whatever happens in their life, the umbilical cord will always remind them of their birthplace. Women, it's important to believe in some in some form of rituals, because rituals, they ground us. It's not about the actual, the bearing and then seeing that umbilical growing, but it is the symbolism. It is what will ground us. It is what will help our faith grow in the things that we believe in. It's about planting the intention that you want to see in your life.
That is so, so beautiful and so inspiring, Tererai. Can you tell us, in chapter 1, you focus on asking this big question so that you can discover there's little hungers and there's the great hunger. Can you explain to us what the little hunger is, what the great hunger is, and how we can access that, how to find our own great hunger?
You know, the concept of the great hunger, I come from this culture where the elders, they believe in the great hunger. There are two kinds of hungers in our life. There is the little hunger and the great hunger. The little hunger, it's all about immediate gratification. I want it now. The little hunger is all about, I'm not good enough. You're judging yourself all the time. I compare myself with others. I stress over, I can't speak. I can't do this thing. You're always internalizing and judging yourself. That's the little hunger. And I talk about that. And the little hunger also comes from our soul wounding, which I also talk about in this book. But there is the great hunger, which is the greatest of all hungers in our life. That is hunger for meaningful life, to lead a meaningful life. Ultimately, as individuals, and especially women, when we are silenced, when we don't find that great hunger, we become bitter. We become bitter. We become always comparing ourselves with others. We are not good enough. The big hunger, how do you find that big hunger? Because you are trying to find meaning in your life by asking yourself, what breaks my heart? It is in those moments of our brokenness, in those moments when we feel overwhelmed, when we begin to ask the question, what breaks my heart? That's when we find the true meaning, the calling. What is this situation calling me to be? Many people have risen in their lives and they have found their big hunger or their great hunger from their own brokenness. I was married when I was very young. I found myself by going back to that marriage, to that suffering, and finding meaning in my life by saying, no girl, no woman should go through what I have gone through. That was my purpose in life, to dig into my own brokenness, my own vulnerability. I did a talk um, on TED, adversity is a gift. Sometimes we mellow in adversity and never want to rise. But I say to women, yes, it's important to confront your vulnerability and find meaning in that vulnerability. That's the great hunger and the little hunger.
That's the first time that concept, when I heard you talk about that with the jour briefly, and then as I've been reading your book, that's the first time I've been introduced to that concept of the great hunger. And it hit me really just deep in my core to have, because we talk a lot about our wants and our needs and sacrifice, but that hunger, I hadn't heard it worded that way. And that just wording it that way makes me, I don't know, realize it's there. I think we all have that hunger in us.
Yeah, we all do. Because if you don't find your great hunger, or when you look at many people who are suffering from the little hunger, because the little hunger is very nudging. It wants more, it wants more, it keeps on demanding more, it wants more attention. When you don't get it, you find other ways to get that attention. We see it on social media. That's the little hunger sometimes leading people. How many likes, how many followers did I get today? That's the little hunger, because you can never satisfy the little hunger. And when you can't satisfy the little hunger, sometimes you go into drugs. And I don't want to say it's the fault of the individual. No, the little hunger has its own source.
Mhm.
We are born into these families, into these communities, sometimes where we have been traumatized. And that trauma carries in our biological makeup,
Yeah.
and it becomes what I call soul wounding. You read about soul wounding in the book, and it silences us. It silences us. It makes us more vulnerable. It makes us never be satisfied with what's in front of us. We want more, or we tend to look for sympathy. You know, I always say when people hear my story, married very young, you know, I started having babies when I was 14 years of age. And people would say, oh, poor Tererai. Oh, shame. And I say, no, 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 no. I am not a victim. No, 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 I am not. I am part of the solution. And here is how I want to define who I am. And I also want to help women and girls around the world to define themselves. I am a dreamer. I am the master and mistress of my own destiny. I refuse to let the past define who I am. I refuse to let the current challenges in my pathway become the narrative for my future. I defied the rules of my father. I defied the norms of my culture. I will never be silent about societal expectations that marginalize women and girls to be submissive. I
Absolutely.
also talk about owning our own sensuality, sexuality as women.
Which is, I didn't expect that in this book. And I thought, why didn't I think that that would be an essential part of the awakened woman? But we don't. That, I believe that's chapter 5 that you go in there and
Just
yeah,
yes.
and
Dance to your own sensuality, the erotic power.
yeah,
I don't care who you marry. Love is just love, and it's pure love.
absolutely. Well,
Yes.
so tell us about how you, because you talk about how that's the power us women have, is we have story and we need to be telling it, and your grandmothers and your mother, and they've done that for generations. So with that in mind, can you tell us the story of how, or a piece of the story of how you defied all of these odds? That woman came to your village and first gave you that thought of, or first asked you, what are your dreams? But then what were some of the pivotal pieces that actually got you from out of the situation you were in?
Yeah. So that was the beginning of my awakening, and then the planting of my dreams. Remember when my mother said, bury your dreams, I had initially had only 4 dreams: to go to America, to have an undergraduate degree, to have a master's and a PhD. 4. And my mother said to me, Tererai, your dreams in this life will have greater meaning when they are tied to the betterment of your community. And I knew my mother was handing me an inheritance. It's not only about the degrees or the diplomas that we put on our walls, the education. It's not about the personal financial gain or the bank account, but it is about how we connect our education, our financial bank, our skills, our gifts, our writing, our poetry, our art to the greater good. That's what makes women successful. So when I wrote down that dream, I added the 5th dream. When I'm done, I want to come back and give back to the community and girls. And I had no idea what I was writing. I just buried those dreams. And it would take me 8 years for me to achieve a high school education. I was doing correspondence. We were still under the British system of education. So I would write through correspondence these homework and assignments, and go to this rural post office and mail the paperwork to this place called Cambridge. And I had no idea where Cambridge was. And I would wait 3-6 months for that brown envelope to come from Cambridge with the results. And I needed 5 subjects. And for me to achieve a high school education, English, math, science, geography, history, and you name it. And because I was poor, my mother was a subsistent farmer. So she would grow vegetables and sell. And I would only take 2 classes at a time because I didn't have enough money. And I would wait for that envelope for the 2 classes that I would have taken, open that envelope, and I realized I have a U ungraded, F failure. Go back, my mother would say I would sell more mangoes and tomatoes, and I would write and send it back. 6 months, the brown envelope comes, I have a U ungraded. After 8 years, the brown envelope came. I have an A, I have a B. I tell this story to say to you, never give up in your life. No matter the difficulties, don't just give up because you are not only dreaming for yourself, but you are dreaming for generations to come. You're dreaming for the young women that are also looking up to you. It's not all about you. And so when I achieved those dreams, I remember during that time, my grandmother would say to me, Tererai, go to this place where you have buried your dreams and visualize as though you have achieved each one of those dreams. So I would go to this place because I had buried my dreams under a rock in the bush, and I would sit in this place and I would reflect on each dream, visualize myself getting into an aeroplane, flying me to this place called America. And remember, I grew up in the rural areas. There's no electricity, there's no running water, there's nothing. The only aeroplane that I knew were the war helicopters. They would come into the community, flying and dropping their guns and what have you. So I would imagine that helicopter, that war helicopter, as an aeroplane. I would sit and see myself getting into that aeroplane, find a seat, and it gets me to this place with tall buildings. And I would visualize myself carrying some books as I am at this place that I would call university, and getting into the classroom and sitting in front so I could hear the lectures. I would visualize myself achieving my undergraduate and go on to achieve my master's. I would then visualize myself getting my PhD. I would spend hours and hours thinking and visualizing. I remember the day that I went to the airport when I received that letter from Oklahoma State University, uh, granting me a place to do my undergraduate in agriculture. I went to the airport at Harare International Airport, looking at everybody and thinking, oh my gosh, what have I done to myself? And getting into that aeroplane, there was this feeling of deja vu. I've been here before because I had spent years and years visualizing about it. And when I arrived in America at Oklahoma State University and seeing those tall buildings, it wasn't new to me. It wasn't. I had seen it in my dreams. That's the power of visualizing. That's the power of planting our intent in this life. You have to hold on and realize that the ancestors in the universe, or God, or whoever you pray to, will honor your dreams.
I love that
So,
so much.
so when I finished my undergraduate, I went on to do my master's. And remember, I didn't have a scholarship, so I used to work 3-4 jobs,
And you had your children.
and I had children. It was tough. It was tough. But I remember one of my kids, my son actually, saying, "Mom, this is too much. Poverty in America is just too much. Look, now we are eating from," because I used to go to pick fruits and vegetables that had been thrown away. And this is too much. At home, at least we can plant our own vegetables and eat. This is not dignity, Mom. Let's go. And I would look at my son and say, "Please help me carry this dream.
Mm.
I want you to say, Mom, we are going to achieve this dream. We are going to change the trajectory." And I'm crying, and my mom and my son is repeating, "Mom, we are going to change the trajectory of your life. We are going to achieve this dream, Mom." And I'm crying, becoming vulnerability to our kids, to our youngsters, so they understand what is at stake.
That is so powerful because you were saying that you were taught we only to have dreams for your children, and then you're telling your child, please help me in this dream for me that will benefit your children, and not to mention the rest of the world, as you went on to do.
Yeah. So it took me 20 years from the day that I buried those dreams to the day that I walked that stadium, that podium, to receive my PhD, the graduation ceremony.
Mhm.
And I really felt like a lawyer who had rested her case to the world. 20 years. And I remember saying to myself, here is my closing argument for the world. If we give education opportunities to women and girls, they can achieve their dreams. If we women believe in our own awakening, we can achieve our dreams. And so here I was, and I'm thinking, gosh, now I have achieved my PhD, and dear mother, why did you make me write that last dream, the fifth dream? The dream that I'm calling in this book, the sacred dream, the dream of giving back. Why did you make me write that dream? Why can't I just be happy here in America and just live and become maybe a professor or whatever, buy myself a mansion? I have a PhD, come on. But I couldn't find joy for some reasons. I kept on thinking about it, and I could hear my mother's voice. Your dreams will have greater meaning when they are tied to the greater good. Well, so I'm thinking, let me sell t-shirts. I'm going to design t-shirts. And I'm going to use this phrase that Joe Lackett said to me when she met me in the village, Chinogona. It is achievable, Chinogona. And I'm saying, I'm going to have these t-shirts I'm going to sell. And after selling, I bet I can sell millions. And I'm going to buy to to build a school in my village and make sure that all the girls are educated. Well, I only sold 20 t-shirts, and mostly to my American friends. I was devastated. I was devastated, and I said, how am I going to go back? But the great hunger keeps on nudging me, keeps on nudging me. And I'm thinking, my grandmother, why would she say, visualize? Yeah, I am, I'm stuck. And guess what? I think it was maybe 3 months after my graduation that I received a phone call from Oprah Winfrey. And she donated 1.5 million US dollars towards that big dream. If you look at that clip, we are standing together and we are saying, Tinogona, it is achievable. We are going to build a school. So today, in partnership with Oprah, through my foundation, I have managed to rebuild 11 schools going on to 12th school, benefiting more than 38,000 kids. And many of these kids, their parents, their grandmothers have never been to school. And we even have kids that are going to university. That's the power of believing in yourself. And that's the reason why I talk about the awakening of women. The silencing of one woman is our collective silencing. Because women, we have so much that we can give to the world. So when one is silenced, imagine if I had been silenced, if I had remained in my village, these numbers that I'm talking about, these kids, we have kids that are at university right now, and we have even a kid in Algeria doing medicine. Their dreams would have been dead. Mm-hmm. So it's important to awaken women. It's important for us to rise. I'll tell you one more story. My mother and my grandmother, and I tell the stories from my ancestors because I'm the product of my ancestors and I'm proud to say so. My mother and my grandmother would always say, Tererai, you need to believe in the power of the invisible ladder and its laws. You know the ladder, the one that you climb, the invisible ladder. This ladder, it has rungs on it. There are others who are at the bottom of the rung, climbing. There are others that are at the top of the rung. Those who are at the top of the rung, they have the moral obligation to pull up the sisters, the communities, the friends, the enemies that are climbing, that are at the bottom of the rung. Because when we rise together, collectively, we can change this world. You know, I always tell women that women, we are the game changers, whether we like it or not. We are the healers, the matriarchs. We are going to change this world. So, what baton are you going to pass on to the next generation? When I think about my great-grandmother, my grandmother, my mother, myself, I visualize my great-grandmother was born into this race, the race that I call the relay of poverty. She was born with this baton, and she is born into this relay that she never defined. She runs with this baton, the baton of racism, the baton of oppression, the baton of early marriage, the baton of illiteracy. She runs with this baton. She runs so fast. She hands it over to my grandmother. My grandmother grabs this baton of illiteracy, the baton of poverty. She runs into this relay. She runs so fast. She hands it over to my mother. My mother grabs this baton of abuse, the baton of a colonial system that never respected her. As a woman, as a Black woman, she runs so fast. The baton of illiteracy, early marriage, she runs and she hands it over to me. I grabbed that baton and I ran and I reached a point where I dropped that baton and I said, that's just bullshit. That's not my relay. That's not my baton. I managed to drop that baton because I had other women who looked right into my face and saw something that I wasn't seeing and said, yes, you can achieve your dreams. That's why I talk about the ladder, the invisible ladder and its laws. That's what's going to make us successful as women.
Absolutely. And what you say about tying your dreams to the greater good, what your mom taught you about that, it's not just those 38,000 children that you've helped, but then this book, and with the platform from Oprah and Ted and all the many women, the women right in here who you are changing, and how much more satisfying that has to be for you as well than you being, like you said, a professor in your mansion doing your thing alone versus changing women and children around the world, their lives. And that only happened because you tied your dreams to the greater good. So how do we, you explain this throughout the book, but for just the few minutes before we jump into the Q&A, what's the number one thing we should do to try and access what our great hunger is? Because we might not all be in tune with what that is for us.
Mm, mm, mm. So, you know, I always say to women, can you identify your soul wounds? What wounds do you carry? What emotional trauma do you carry? Can you confront by writing down those wounds? Every day, I wake up at 4 a.m. That's when I do my writing, just before the sunrise. I write down my wounds. I still have my own wounds. What silences me? I write it down. I write it down. I write it down. I write it down. I don't have to edit what I'm writing. I just write. This book came from that place of just writing, just writing. And in that confrontation, I begin to see some light of what I can change. Purging of what silences us is very important. Because when you see it on paper, you can come up with a movie, because you can then go back and rewrite your story in the way in which you want it to be told. That's finding your hunger. That's owning your voice. Can I ask, the dreams that you have as writers, do you have the voice that matches those dreams? Do you have the voice that matches what you are writing? Because you can just write, but if you don't have the voice that can own it, the voice that can allow you to climb that mountain and say, here I am. You have to have that voice.
And I think you figure that out and are able to access that voice when we are silenced and we're not used to using that voice. I think that's why that practice you have every day in the morning is so powerful, because we're more free to be vulnerable when we know this is just for me. This is just in my own private time writing these things down.
Mm-hmm. You know, and I just want to say, I'm not saying, and I'm not preaching you to be Mother Teresa's, because I am not a Mother Teresa, but I'm just telling you from what has worked for me.
Mhm.
And for many indigenous communities, they talk about humankind as not woven the web of life. We are but one thread within it. Whatever we do to the web, we do it to ourselves. All things are bound together. All things are connected. Our very survival is connected to the survival of others.
Mm.
Women, we are here for a purpose. And I want you to find that purpose. Owning your voice. If you're into poetry, own that poetry. Can it be part of your healing as it heals nations?
That's so beautiful.
If you are an author, write and never to apologize and own that writing. And if you are a painter, an artist, can I look at your art and your artist? Can I look and feel some healing? Because everything that we do is to heal ourselves and heal the nation. Every writing that you do is to heal others.
Mm. That's so powerful and makes it feel so much more inspiring to do this thing that all of us here love to do. Tererai, thank you so much for sharing your story, for being vulnerable and open with us. I want to open up the floor for Q&A. Just raise your hand or say in the chat box me, and I will call your name so that we don't just all unmute at the same time. But we would love to hear your questions for Tererai. And I will just say in the comments, Sarah had said, I appreciate what you explained about rituals. I used to think routines were something basic and boring, but now I realize they are my rituals that ground me in an unpredictable world. And I think that's really
That's,
powerful.
yeah. That's really,
Cindy, you have a question. Go ahead and unmute yourself, and then we'll have Sarah Duncan unmute after that.
Hi, it's so lovely to meet you. Thank you so much. I have a question for you. How did you express yourself at your young age? Now you write after your journey, but keep, how did you find that within yourself as you were growing up, as you were young?
I was very fortunate, Cindy. Thank you, Cindy. I was very fortunate that it is in the stories that I would hear from my grandmother and my mother. That helped me to find my voice. Because in the evenings, after all the work, we would sit around and open fire, and I would listen to my grandmother and mother. And I think it's important for us to sit with our loved ones and share stories, because that's how we find our voices. I knew I had stories. I knew I had poetry because I would hear them talk, I would hear them share. I know I am a singer because my grandmother would hear me and sing. I know I'm a dancer because I would see my community dancing Chinyamsasure, the erotic dance. So all these things ground me, and it's important for us as women to go back to tell the stories, to share the stories with others. But first of all, to own our voices as we tell those stories.
That's
Thank
awesome.
you.
Sarah Duncan, go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, Tererai. I loved your book and all your wisdom. I have a bit of a weird question. I know that this is about the awakened woman, but I am the mother of sons.
Mm,
And I'm
mhm.
wondering, how can we get this message to boys and men as well? Because I really feel like they, also have dreams that are not being fulfilled in some cases. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are about how do we include boys and men in this work?
So an awakened woman is the one who can look at both her boy child and her girl child and say, rise. I don't want you to be silenced. That's the so the awakened woman is the midwife. A midwife delivers both boys and girls. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. This is not about women, but it is about the awakening of women to become the fertile ground where others can thrive and rise. I have heard men reading this book and crying and saying, oh my goodness, Tererai, can you write another book for awakened men? So I think as women, we can take these lessons and apply them, because if you apply these lessons to your sons and to your daughters, they are more likely to raise better human beings and to pave way for a better world. It's about empathy, compassion. It's about our Ubuntu. Ubuntu, which is I am because we are, since we are, therefore I am. The essence of our humanity. It is very core. Yeah.
That's perfect. Thank you, Tererai. We have Heidi and then Sky.
Hi, Tererai.
Hi, Heidi, how are you?
I'm so happy to be with you. I've been listening to your book and with tears and joy and feeling so inspired. So thank you so much.
You're most welcome. Thank
It's
you.
gorgeous. So I listen to it and then I go back and underline parts. So I buy books twice or more times, which I always think is a good idea because I plan to be a published author. And so I'm thinking that's good for my future people too. They will buy books twice. So.
Oh, good. Yeah, the more books you guys buy, the more I can continue to build schools and educate more. By the way, the schools that I am building, they not my schools. They are public schools that have been neglected by the government. And so I'm going in and rebuild those schools. So proceeds from the book will always go towards our education. I was hoping this book would become a bestseller and get millions, and I still have to plant that dream. But I'm tired of digging dirt and burying dreams. Therefore, I am burying my dreams in your heart. Okay, Heidi.
They are, it is in my heart. And I plan to, for anyone's birthday and presents for the next year, this is what they're getting. So I will be sharing it because it's really helping me. And I was listening to you talk about the right to dream, and I'm going to get emotional. Oftentimes when I hear you say that, or when I'm listening to something that I can feel it ignited in me so big that it comes out my eyeballs like it is right now. And sometimes I don't even have the words for it, as the desire to dream, to write books. And I know I have books in me, it's getting them out. And the first one has been rewritten twice. because there's unlearning happening, and there's a clarifying of my voice. I think what you were talking about, how we were so trained to be silent,
Mhm.
and to have the permission to really speak truth. This group has been helping me immensely with that. And so I guess my question might be, um, how how to follow along with what dreams are percolating when there seem to be a bunch there, together.
Well, let me first address um, the tears. It is the nudging of your great hunger.
Yeah.
It nudges so badly in us that we feel the overflowing of our tears. So we should never be apologizing when we cry, because you don't want to silence that great hunger. Let it pour. Let it pour. Like I said, when you have so many dreams, just write, just write, just write. There's beauty in writing, because by the end of whatever, I always give myself 21 days if I have some ideas, some confusion. And I'm saying these 21 days, I'm going to write down my confusion. By the end of 21 days, I'm telling you, things become much more clear and cleaner. That's the beauty of writing. It becomes clear and cleaner. So when you still get overwhelmed with, I have so many, you haven't taken the journey, because you need to go through these contours, the hills, the silence, because writing is not an easy thing. There are lonely days that you write. You are going through a journey. There is wounding in that journey. Then you begin to see the green pastures, and everything becomes clean and clear. So give yourselves, whether you're giving yourself 7 days, I am a slow learner. So I tend to take more days, but some of you might get 7 days or 2 days, but I always want to feel the pain. If what I am writing, it's painful, it's hateful, but I have to write it, I have to get it out, I have to get it out, I have to unbottle it, because it's part of my healing as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Tererai. Sky, if your question is a quick one, we'll end with your question, and then we'll let Tererai get on to her day and her thing. So Sky, you're...
Well, if you need me for extra few minutes, I can be here, no worries. But
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, if anyone else has questions after Sky, raise your hand now. I see Agatha after. So yeah, raise your hand now, but we'll start with Sky.
Good morning. Thank you everyone for being here. Tererai, Dr. Trent, this has been a prayer answered. This has been a huge inspiration of hope. Truly, I think you have cracked my heart open, and I'm sure I speak for others as well. My questions was actually, the one I had was similar to Heidi's, about when you have so many gifts, so many visions, where do you go? How do you harness your energy? But I'll shift from that because you answered that so beautifully. So my question is, does this all come down to trust?
To trust yourself, yes. It comes down to be grounded in yourself. You know, Maya Angelou, she said something. A woman in harmony with her spirit is like a flowing river. She goes where she will without pretense. She is prepared to be herself and only herself. Trusting yourself, coming home to yourself, giving yourself permission. Women, we have a problem. We want others to give us permission. Own who you are, own your world, give yourself permission. That's self-care. That's loving yourself.
Thank you so much.
I always say, you can't trust someone if you don't trust yourself. You can't love someone when you can't love yourself. You have to love yourself first, because when you do that, it glitters. Everybody can see the love in you. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think we have a lot of work to do as women. Unfortunately, this society does not create space for that, does not teach us to love ourselves. And that's been my life's work, actually. Yeah, supporting women in self-love.
And they prefer our silencing. The society prefers our silencing. Women, we are hard on ourselves. But also women, we need to support one another and to be authentic in that support. You know, it's one thing to say, oh, good job. But it's another to say to another writer, how best can I be present? Do you have a chapter that you want me to read? You know, and be more practical about it. But we are now living in a world that says, you know, my cup has to be overflowing for me to give you. Oh my gosh, when is it going to be overflowing? This cup is not going to overflow. We should just learn to give, learn to love. That's love. Whether your cup is half empty, you know, just bring others into that cup of yours and say, oh, then you become depleted. Oh my goodness, you will never be depleted because we have so much love in us. Yeah. You know, but it's true also when someone is busy. Yes, they are busy. But if you have a moment to reach out to someone, please, let's do it. Let's be supportive of one another as women.
That's so good. I love that. Thank you, Tererai. Agatha, and if I'm saying your name wrong, please correct me, but you're up.
No, it's fine. In French, we say Agathe, but Agatha is fine. Thank you, Dr. Chen, for allowing us to share with you and sharing your story. And my question was related to what you were talking about just right now, about supporting each other. And I was wondering if when you told your dreams out loud to these circles of women in your village, afterwards, did you get support from those women? You said your mother told you to bury your dreams, but did all the community comes together to help you in some ways?
So at first, when I spoke loudly about my dream, there was silence, you know, because women were now judging themselves and saying, oh, that's impossible. That's impossible, because they were judging from their own perception of, you know, from their own reality. But what's interesting is now that I am bringing education, I remember when we got this funding from Oprah Winfrey, women were on the forefront telling men that it's our daughter who brought this school. So they were all molding bricks, helping with the school. And now I have both men and women, old men especially, coming to me with their daughters and saying, can she be just like you? So we have to be role models sometimes for people to see, yes, it can be achievable. Yes, Tinogona, it is achievable. So yeah, I'm getting support from women. It's just amazing. Yeah,
Thank you for your reply.
you're welcome. You're
That's
welcome.
perfect. Tererai, I think you have left us totally inspired. And for those of us who haven't had a chance to dive into the book yet, because it's a June book, so you have all of June to read it, I think this has only just furthered our hunger to read this and to figure out how to get just a little bit more of that inspiration so that we can really go, because this is a group, this is a community that Azure has built around her of dreamers, which makes sense because Azure herself is a big, one of the biggest dreamers I know. And I'm just so grateful. And I know our whole community and Azure as well are so grateful for you coming to inspire us and to give us some practical tools as well to really figure out how to make our dreams achievable. So thank you.
Thank you very, very much. It was my honor to be with you girls. Enjoy, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we
All
will see you again at the end of the month. And then, and you're welcome to head off onto your day. I will stay on here for anyone who wants to participate in a writing prompt based on this.
All right. Okay.
Thank you, Tererai.
You.
Have a wonderful day.
You too.
Okay, you guys, thank you so much for, I'm going to put you guys on gallery view now so I can see everyone. Thank you so much for your participation and your questions and just like your energy here. It's been really good, right? It's been awesome. So good. So the thing that I wanted to give you guys just like 5 minutes to write. And then if anyone wants to come on here and share either what they've written or just something about, you know, the prompt. I want us to just write for a minute, what breaks your heart? Because that's what she talks about in here. That's the question she uses. Ask yourself, what breaks your heart right now? And that is the step, the jumping off point to figure out what your great hunger is. And she talks about, you might need to mull this over while you're doing the dishes. You might need to, this may be days. So it's not like there's any expectation to figure out your great hunger right now. But I think it would be really interesting to write for 5 minutes and see, just share a little bit of what some of us have come up with, even if it isn't the final product of what we discover. Does that sound good? Okay, so let's do, you can keep your video on or off, I don't care, but I'm gonna set my timer and I'm gonna mute myself and 5 minutes, I'll pop back on.